Hey everyone, it is Thursday afternoon. Welcome to another edition of Sports Speak. I'm Eddie Kalegi.
And I'm Tim Moore.
We're going to have Zoe Alter joining us in about 10 minutes to preview the NFL season, which is starting in just 2 weeks from today. The Chiefs and Texans will face off, but there is something that we'd be remiss if we did not address. There was another unprecedented event in the sports world yesterday. You got to go back to Sunday in Kenosha, Wisconsin, when Jacob Blake, there was a warrant for his arrest. He was walking back towards his car away from the police. He started reaching into his car where 3 children were in there, and the police fired 7 shots at his back. He did not die. However, he is likely paralyzed from the waist down. And we have seen outrage once again break out across the country, not as much in terms of forceful nationwide protests, although you never know, that could come, but we're starting to see the impact from the sports world. Remember, the George Floyd incident happened when no sports were in action. Now, sports are back, and we're seeing athletes speaking out. Baseball, MLS, both a couple teams canceled a couple of games. They've already been rescheduled. Baseball, all those games are going to be played again today. We saw a nice stand of solidarity between some players. NBA was a little different, as was the WNBA. As in both leagues, the 3 postseason games yesterday were postponed. And more so in the NBA, there's been rumors as to whether or not the season will continue. And there was a meeting last night where the Lakers and Clippers, when all the teams were polled, surprisingly, they were the 2 teams who said to not continue the season. Now those things are changing, and we're recording this at 12:06 Eastern time. So when this debuts at 4 o'clock, the news could be a lot different on the NBA front. But I just want to talk about this before we get into the NFL preview because, frankly, this is important. And, my first judgment when I saw this, that the NBA was going to be boycotting games, I mean, I'll be honest, I was frustrated as a sports fan. And this has really, showed the dichotomy between a sports fan and being an American, because typically those things don't mix. We see sports as an escape from the real world and just, an opportunity just to relieve stress, especially in 2020. We saw how everybody rejoiced when sports came back. But this has really hit at home. And you think about the Milwaukee Bucks too, where their backup shooting guard Sterling Brown was a victim of police brutality himself 2 years ago, which is much of the reason why the Bucks, also because this incident happened in Wisconsin, those 2 things together was a motivating factor for why they really were the ones who started this and spoke out against playing. Now, like I said, as a sports fan, I want them on the court. And I'll be honest, any sports fan, you want the athletes focused on sports. But at the same time, as an American, you understand their reasoning. And a lot of people support this decision by the Bucks and what's going to come forwards. Now, I want to see the NBA playoffs continue, but this is also based on the individual player. And I am not an African American. I cannot speak directly. I really think it's impossible for anyone to try to forge an opinion unless they're African American or have a lot of Black friends that they've been able to talk to and get to, try to empathize with them. You can't really have an opinion on this either way unless you really get to know what it is like to be a Black person in America in 2020. And the sports, I don't know who said this quote, but it's been said before that sports are the reward for a functioning society. And I understand the meaning of that quote as well, because think about it. Major professional sports have been going on for about 100 years. The country has been going on for 250, and racial injustices involving African Americans and Africans in general have been going on for over 5 centuries, since the Spanish first decided to try out slavery after discovering it in Africa in the 1500s. So you have to be able to put things into perspective here. And that's one of the main things that people have to consider. Now, will NBA players boycotting make a big difference? Frankly, I don't really think it will. I think it does gain some attention of people, and you know what? It takes away the escape that people have to try to get away from what's going on, and kind of brings the attention to those who want to avoid this problem. But honestly, I think the most important thing is to encourage people to vote. And, that we've seen NBA players, specifically LeBron James and Michael Jordan, who have been very outspoken about registering people to vote, because in the end, that's what changes things. Protests can help spark change. They are not going to cause change. Burning things down does not either. What sparks change is voting people into office who will actually put that change into action. So that's got to be front and center. If the NBA players feel that it's more important to be, staying away at this time, I get it. I'm not going to fight with them because, like I said, I'm not an African American. It's hard for me to understand what place they're in. But at the same time, I want to see them on the court. I want to see the NBA continue because of how successful the bubble has been. But we just really have to see, because this is a repeated problem. I still believe that each of these police incidents should be considered isolated because each one is different and each one is its own situation. And, sometimes the cops, not every single one of these incidents towards African Americans are completely the cops 100% in the wrong. I think the George Floyd incident especially was the opposite of that, was completely cops in the wrong. Here, you never really knew, and then you found out that this man, Mr. Blake, had a knife on him. So you don't really know, and you can't. Once again, it's hard to speak for police officers when you're not in that situation. But the same goes both ways with African Americans as well, which is why right now, just as a sports fan and as an American, I understand the basketball players' sentiment, and I agree with them if they feel the need to, boycott and continue it. I'm not really going to protest because it's not my place.
Well, and you have to go back to about a month ago with the George Floyd incident in regards to NBA players as it is. Most of them did not want to play because they felt the situation was bigger than what basketball is itself. And to me, this incident, rather, they're right or wrong in regards to supporting the incident, because let's be honest, we don't know all the information yet. Hopefully we'll find out soon to make a valid judgment. But overall, this goes back to where it was a month ago, in that these players wanted to show support for what they believe in, but they were forced to come into the bubble if they chose to, of course, and they've been sitting by themselves for, what is it now, nearly a month?
Mm-hmm.
So the way I look at it is that this is just the NBA coming together and showing solidarity for something that they believe, that they said a month ago, hey, sometimes things are bigger than basketball. And yesterday, I applaud them 100% because this was bigger than basketball. Fighting for what they believe in is a lot bigger than basketball. And overall, it is time for a change in this country. And unfortunately, the realism is in today's society, and I don't want to get political on this, but the only people that have an opinion, and I thought Anthony Rizzo, despite his expletives yesterday on the MLB side, his point was very valid, that unless it affects the rich people that run this society, unless it personally affects their pockets or what affects their outcome in their future, that's when things matter and their agendas start to matter. And that's what I think mostly needs change. And I said a point yesterday, I think it was to Aiden, because this was a big discussion in our group chat, that, and I'm not taking a shot at Donald Trump. I believe personally, again, not getting my political aspects in, but you can go 50-50 on Trump in today's society. But I feel that there hasn't been personally a lot done since the George Floyd incident. And I understand in a short amount of time, you can't get, the world to immediately change, but you can take action. I felt that if, for example, something happened to Donald Trump personally, in which some of his own, personal belongings compared to independent or minor businesses were burned down or damaged, something would have changed immediately. But again, that goes back to Anthony Rizzo's point that once a person is personally affected, guess what? That's when change starts to occur. And it's sad that it has to get to that point. But the NBA players standing out and making a difference, because essentially, guess what? What they're doing does affect the rich. It affects the NBA owners. It affects the NBA themselves, as well as, guess what? Other leagues are looking at this, the MLB. This has a big effect on them, even though, yes, they may be coming back to play today. Doesn't mean this, again, doesn't happen in the future. I'm eager to see what happens with the NFL if this happens again. Because you have to remember, the NFL also has a very high majority in African-American players. I'm sure they want to stand out as well in regards to a situation like this. So I think this is a step in the future of showing that sometimes things are bigger than sports. And I applaud every single person that took support in this, because at the end of the day, it's what you believe in. And yes, you can vote. Yes, you can have an impact, but that's the most you can do, basically. And that's very minuscule in what today we have today's society. So change does have to happen.
Yeah, we're going to have Zoe in here in a moment, but I want to brush off with this because you mentioned Rizzo's point, which was actually what I was going to conclude with, that also goes on a two-way street as well. And I'm not going to say that the NBA players, I agree. I think a lot of them care very much about this situation, but you also have to remember that this was in the playoffs. And these guys are getting bonuses in the playoffs, but they're not getting their regular salary in the postseason. So, when it comes to affecting the wallet, you said you never know, like, if they would actually stick with this in the regular season, because think about it, 2 months ago, the only person who wanted to do this really and was committed was Kyrie Irving. Like, he was the only big superstar. Now in a situation where you're not really getting anything extra, paired with living in the bubble for 4 weeks, like that's the type of thing. But before we let Zoe in, one last thing that I just want to conclude with, because there's a lot of people, you're going to hear criticism of NBA players like, guess what? We know you're black, but you have millions of dollars. You live in mansions. You have an easy, comfortable life, and that's not wrong. But at the same time, the important thing to remember is there are people who are in underprivileged communities that do not have the outlet, if they're upset with injustice, to actually speak out. Not just because of the platform, but also just because of money. If they have to worry about work and, having food and to provide for their family on a daily basis, they cannot commit to politics and be constantly consumed by it. Honestly, anyone who can be constantly consumed by politics is kind of privileged in their own way to have that opportunity. So that being said, the NBA players using their platform, yes, they might not be as much personally affected other than Sterling Brown, in a situation like that, but it's interesting just to consider that perspective as well. So we're going to bring in Zoe here and turn towards the actual action going on in sports. We've got Zoe Alter coming on here on Sports Speak episode 22 to discuss the NFL season, which is just 2 weeks away. Zoe, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk with you guys. I know it's been a couple weeks, so.
Yeah, great to have you back. Obviously, we talked about it a little during the baseball preview. We got to start with your favorite team, the Detroit Lions.
Oh, God. All right.
Matthew Stafford is healthy, and I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. I think he's a very underrated quarterback. But my concern is, what else do you have on that offense? You have a couple solid receivers. The running game is just a mix of rookies, young guys, and people that get hurt. So there's really not much consistency that you can trust there. And I know you got Okuda on defense, but you're also in a tough division with Minnesota and Green Bay. So how is this going to shape up for Detroit this season?
You bring up really good points. The NFC North is definitely one of the tougher divisions right now. Maybe it's because I'm biased, but I would definitely say it's one of the tougher divisions. On offense, the Lions do have for their running game, they picked up Swift in the draft, and he's going to be a real asset. I know we talked a little bit about a Theo Riddick type guy last time. And we also have Carry-On, of course. And Carry-On, if he can stay healthy, is going to be really good. He did not have issues in college with injuries. And I think last year was kind of just the exception with, literally all the Lions running backs got hurt, every single one of them. They just had to keep bringing guys up. So I think it has more to do with the Lions and maybe not him himself. So I think if he can stay healthy, your offense is going to be completely fine. And you mentioned Matt Stafford. Before he got hurt, even when he was hurt and was still played at an MVP level. So they're just going to have to play through Matt Stafford on offense. On defense, it gets a little tougher. I'll admit that. You pick up, obviously we had Jared Davis. They had Jared Davis there before in the middle. He's been really good. He's been really improving, getting the whole defense around him going. And you have a couple other guys, Akwara, that you throw in. They just picked up his brother in the draft. So you have two brothers playing on the line. It looks bright. I know it sounds bad. The Lions, when you think of the Lions, you're like, oh, they're going to be bad because, it's the Lions. But I would say the future looks a little bit brighter now than it has for the past couple of years.
I mean, I would say that the future does look brighter, especially in the offensive end. But on the defensive end, again, I'm still a little bit concerned because when your number one cornerback is Desmond Trufant, who hasn't been able to stay healthy since he was last a Pro Bowler, just it does concern me a little bit in that secondary because, to be blatantly honest, it reminds me a lot of the New York Giants in that you have a lot of risky players. You don't know how it can go. It can work out, for example, how Janoris Jenkins did for a good little while for the Giants. And then all of a sudden didn't. Same thing as well as Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie with their history. But I'm eager to see how he turns out in particular. But you also look up and through that defense too. How does Jamie Collins do? We knew Collins has been somewhat of a solid player, especially when he was with the Patriots. When he went to the Browns, he faded away a little bit. And then obviously, ended up going back to New England. But I think he does do well in a Matt Patricia system. So I'm eager to see if he's a difference player. But the last point I do want to make the difference going back on the offensive end is which of those three receivers have to have that good of a season to be the difference makers and going to be Marvin Jones, Danny Amendola?
The answer is none of them. The answer is
I apologize.
No, you're good. The answer.
No, I'm sorry. My audio cut out.
No, you're good. No, I would say the answer is none of them. I think last year you had guys, each of them had – the Lions, I believe, were most in the league in the guys who had over 100-yard games. They have a bunch of guys. Maybe it's not the biggest name guys, but sometimes they have guys that they get in there who they throw the ball to and who get crazy receptions. So I don't think you need anyone to be a star. Galladay's always going to try and be the star. It's the kind of guy he is. But you don't need anyone to be insane. You need your guys to be there. You need Amendola in the slot, Galladay and Marvin Jones on the sides out long. But no one needs to have a Pro Bowl year. You just need to get the ball to your guys, even short passes. Matt Stafford has a hell of an arm. You guys know that. The whole league knows that. And as long as you can have someone down there catching the passes, it doesn't matter who it is. It can switch every play. But as long as you give Matt Stafford the opportunity to throw and you get your run game going, I don't think it matters who's back there.
So I want to re-engage with a debate with Zoe that we had at broadcasting camp, and it was about Tom Brady going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because I think this is a good move, and I think Bruce Arians is going to be able to make this work. I don't think they're going to be as good as New Orleans, but I think Tampa is going to be a good playoff team and have a 10-win season.
All right, I'll tell you once, Eddie, I'll tell you again. Brady is not the right fit for Tampa. He doesn't work there. You have two of the best receivers in the league in Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. And Brady just does not stack up with them at all. Sure, Brady can throw a nice 5-yard pass. That's beautiful for him. But going downfield, that's not going to happen. He doesn't have the mobility. He doesn't have the arm for that. He never really had the arm for that, but he got it done. Now his accuracy is completely shot. His arm's shot. He has no chance. And you want two guys who want to be stars. Mike Evans has always been that guy, but they've both been humble the past couple seasons, which is good. But with Brady, he's going to take that stardom away from them, and especially Gronk. And I don't know how that's going to fare with you have 4 huge stars on a team. How are they all going to battle?
Well, I mean, I'm going to beg to differ. I think, in fact, that the Bucs, they win 12 games this year. Because if I'm being honest, I'm looking at this. Yes, Tom Brady is a star. There is no denying that. But you have to realize the big reason why Tom Brady left New England wasn't just because he was fed up with the system, but it was the fact that he never had a wide receiver consistent ever playing with the Patriots. Now, he's had good receivers. I'm not denying that, but he hasn't had consistent receivers. And you put him in a system with Bruce Arians, the quarterback guru, and I don't care what anyone says. This is the same man that made Carson Palmer and the Arizona Cardinals relevant at the end of his career when no one thought he could be. So the fact that you put him together with Bruce, the only man that's been in the league longer than Bill Belichick, guess what? There's going to be success offensively. Now, I still am concerned about their defense. They've been developing that. I mean, overall, they do have a good defensive line and a good linebacker system, but that secondary has always been inconsistent no matter who was back there for Tampa. But I'm sure they can fix that. And you look at that offense, it is going to be yards after yards after yards. Don't get me wrong, Tom Brady's been Mr. Check Down of late, but he can throw drag routes overall to Rob Gronkowski in streaks. He can fire double coverage passes to Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, this offense is going to be a threat. It's going to be arguably the best in the NFC South, if not the NFL. I don't think they're the best offensive and passing yards, but overall, they're going to be one of the top in yards when it's done at the end of the year.
If not passing yards, then running yards. I mean, who you have, Ronald Jones? Because that's going to do you well, right?
But Ronald Jones can run. He's, in fact, a very good runner, but his big thing has been, can he keep the football in his hands and not fumble?
I will say, though,
he's been a very good piece.
I will say, though, Tom Brady has had a history of helping out his running backs. And, I know that might also be credit to Belichick here, too, but they've had running backs that really weren't, stars. And then you've got James White, Sony Michel, Mike Gillislee, who have, really outperformed the expectations. But I think I'm actually going to say Tim's going a little far here on Tampa because –
A little far? You just said Bruce Arians is basically a better coach. You said Brady's going to do better with Bruce Arians than Bill Belichick. You were like, he left Bill Belichick and he's still going to be as good. And then you said
you're saying the system doesn't fit.
Been their solid receiver for years.
But you're saying the system doesn't fit. It fits greatly with Tom Brady. Okay, let me ask you, how mobile was Carson Palmer at the end of his career? The man was hurt every other week, it felt like.
Well, Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes playing when Carson Palmer played? When he was big, were Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson playing? It's a running league now. It's the passing league still, but the quarterback running has become so important, and Tom Brady doesn't have that. So in this modern day league,
it's become so important now, with the exception of Patrick Mahomes, I guess you could say. When's the last time a mobile quarterback has gone on to win a Super Bowl? Russell Wilson? That's once in 7 years.
I get that. I do get that.
No, I beg to differ in that regard. And yes, it is the future of the NFL. But the realism is that you don't have to be Lamar Jackson, because there is no other Lamar Jackson to go out there and be successful, in my opinion. But you look at the Bucs too, and I do want to say this. You mentioned the running back game. I think they have a very big upside. Let's not forget that they also have LaShawn McCoy, who has battled through injuries of late, but he perhaps could still be relevant.
You just tell me LaShawn McCoy is going to fix their running game? Wait, can we just confirm? Did you say LaShawn McCoy is going to fix their running game? The guy who pretty much gets negative points in fantasy every week? Is that the LaShawn McCoy we're talking about?
I mean, LaShawn McCoy, you have to remember, until that injury, he was a 1,000-yard rusher every single year. He was one of the best running backs in the league.
Robert Griffin was like an MVP before his injury. What is he now?
Well, again, I think that when you look at it, LaShawn McCoy, in depth perspective, being a third down running back, and by the way, the passing running back that Tom Brady can check down to, it becomes reliable. Again, when you look at that system, James White became successful. How? You would never think of it as he's a straight-up running back.
He was young at the time.
He made himself versatile.
Yeah, LaShawn McCoy is about 8 years past his prime, Tim.
Yeah. So is Frank Gore, but he's still on a roster, right?
LaShawn McCoy is not Frank Gore. Frank Gore, he's like third all-time in rushing yards? Listen, I'm an Eagles fan. I support my old Eagles, but LaShawn McCoy is not a star over here. Don't make him out more than he is. And the last couple of years, he hasn't really been relevant. That's my concern with Tampa Bay, that there is a lot of wild card pieces. We don't know how in-game shape Rob Gronkowski is, who's been too busy, hosting the Nickelodeon Kids' Choice Sports Awards every year. Get ready to play. And, you don't know about him. You don't know about McCoy. I do trust the system because there are two great receivers. And, what Zoe was saying earlier about, that Tom Brady wouldn't enable them to reach their stardom, was Jameis Winston enabling that? Because Tom Brady, I know he can't throw it deep, but at least he can throw it to the right team.
That's true. I get that. I think on paper, the Patriots look really – I know the Patriots. I keep thinking I can't get Tom Brady away from them. The Buccaneers, on paper, I think they look really good. But I think once you're going to see them get into a game situation, that's when things are going to go awry.
Well, I do want to bring up one more point, too, that in regards to not necessarily the Bucs, but the NFL in general. When we're looking into the future of this season, we have to remember one thing as well, where I think stars tend to stand out in this particular season, in just this year, because there's no other season like it. We're going to see the best of the best players early on stand out because of the fact there's been no preseason games. Yes, you've had practice, don't get me wrong, but there's nothing like a game situation. Tom's going to prove very early on. He is a star. We can all agree that. But the star that he's supposedly been in the Patriot system, he has an opportunity to prove that he's that same guy that is the great quarterback that we all know, the greatest of all time, to come out and bring Tampa Bay to victories with that offense early on. But if he struggles, guess what? It may not work out for him. But I will say this, compared to other quarterbacks in the NFL this year, he was one of the first ones practicing with his core right when he signed. There's a lot of teams behind him. I mean, we saw the New York Giants, for example, utilizing with their defensive backs tennis balls on their hands to prevent them from holding. That's not something that's going to get fixed in 2 weeks. But the Giants chose to wait their length. Tampa, they weren't patient. Throughout this pandemic, they've been practicing and they've been making sure that everyone's on cue, going through the playbook and understanding. I think that in that regards, the better players that understand systems and understand how to play the league are going to show out during this scenario.
I don't think Brady's going to have a problem with the playbook. If he needs to, he'll just steal it from someone else. I don't think that's his issue. I think his issue is going to be on the field.
So let's move on to predictions. And I'm going to start with the AFC. I want us to each go through one team in the AFC that we think is going to be surprisingly good and one surprisingly bad. I'm going to start. The surprisingly good team I think we're going to see in the AFC is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, I know the Ravens are going to be better than them, but the Bengals, I know they have Joe Burrow, and I think Joe Burrow is going to turn out pretty good in the NFL, but they have nothing. That team is going to be a mess this season, and any rookie that's being inserted without any preseason games this year is really going to struggle, especially Joe Burrow, when unlike a lot of rookies, we know he's going to be out there week one, game one, trying to get things started with the offense after not playing a single snap in a preseason game. So between that and the Browns, I have no faith in the Browns, and I have no faith in Baker Mayfield. So those are some easy wins to chalk up for Pittsburgh. They have one of the best defenses in the NFL, and they still have a great coach in Tomlin. Ben Roethlisberger's coming back from his injury. I think he's going to be solid. They still have a couple decent targets. So that's the team that I think that's going to be solid. The team that I think is going to be surprisingly bad this year, there's been a lot of people who have been hyping up the Las Vegas Raiders. I know they have some young guys. I know they have Josh Jacobs and Darren Waller, but I'm sorry, I don't see how Derek Carr is going to lead you that far, especially when you're in the same division as Pat Mahomes.
Who did you even hear hyping them up? I don't think they're a team that anyone is expecting to be good. For me, they're at like the very bottom of my chart.
John Gruden's probably the only person hyping them up.
I will, to be fair, I was the one that said I think they could be a wild card team this season. I didn't say they'll win the West, but I said I think they have potential if all the things are put together, because Gruden's been slowly improving every single year. But I'm not going to go and say that they're going to, be the best team. They're going to go 12-4. I don't see that happening.
Yeah, that'll come back to bite you if you go for that one too. The new Buccaneers.
So who's your good and bad?
All right. So for the whole AFC, I'm trying to think of who. All right. I think I'm looking at my, because I have all like the divisions written out. And I'm just trying to think. Okay. This sounds weird, but I think the Browns could potentially get it together. I know that sounds so messed up and odd, but if you think about it, they have all the pieces. It's just piecing them together. They had last year to try to get them together, and I don't think Odell's personality matches with everyone, so I think in a sense you just have to hope something sidelines him and everyone else gets to work. But I think if you take Odell out of the equation, or even if you don't throw to him that often, I think your team kind of comes together. Sure, I don't really believe in Baker that much, but you have Nick Chubb with your running backs. You still have Jarvis Landry, and you have a great defense.
So you're banking on a new coach and your number one receiver to get hurt to be able to find success?
I know it sounds weird. I know, but I'm saying I think it could happen. I promise. And then a team that I don't think is going to be so good that everyone kind of has been hyping up, the Texans. I just don't think it works out for them. I think you lose your biggest receiver who you go to on every third down play ever, if not every play. And then I really do believe in Deshaun Watson, but I don't think that without that receiver or without the other players around him, you can do anything. And J.J. Watt gets hurt every year. So,
Tim, how about you?
Well, I'm going to start with my down first, and I think this is going to come as a surprise, but I'm going to go with the Buffalo Bills. I mean, the way you look at it, a big, trade for Stephon Diggs, you would think this is a team that's going to get better. But on the offensive end, don't get me wrong, they do get better, but I question, and don't get me wrong, Buffalo's always consistent on defense. There's no denying that. But I question teams that don't make consistent moves in the offseason to overall make a difference. I just don't have faith in Buffalo. To me, they've been too quiet. And I'm not saying that they're going to, lose to the Jets or the Dolphins, who, by the way, I think could be a surprise, but they're not going to be my surprise pick. I think it's going to be a tough time for Buffalo this year. And I see them being below 500. I'm not saying like 5-11-ish, but a disappointment from where their expectations were supposed to be. Now, when I'm also looking at a team that could stay around down the middle, I would say the Tennessee Titans. They're another team that hasn't really done much, but their defense is always very good. And again, the difference maker is how does that offense, work around Derrick Henry? Henry just signed that extension. Does he fade off now because he got his money? Or does that offense continue to be ground and pound and dominant that we saw at the end of last year? But my surprise team that I'm going to say this year that I think could be good, and that's going to come on the NFC side. And I think this year, believe it or not, for me, I think this could be a very good year for the Arizona Cardinals. I'm not saying that they may go out there and win the West, but you have the depletion of the Rams, and you look at the 49ers, again, didn't make many changes either. They're a good team. I think they could still win the West, but overall, there's not too much that really jumps out at me. And, you look out at the other teams in the West. I mean, like I said, it's a great opportunity for Arizona and Kyler Murray to show what they're made of. And you add DeAndre Hopkins, and the fact that still right now chasing that record out there is Larry Fitzgerald. This could be a team that, jumps up into a wild card position or even is battling for the division come year end. And of course, I failed to mention the other team, the Seattle Seahawks. It's really 50-50 on what they do and how that defense plays to open up the year.
I think their defense is going to be solid. I still trust the Seahawks, and I trust Pete Carroll, and I still think Russell Wilson's a great quarterback. Let me just do my quick NFC. I'll start with the bad. I'm going to go with San Francisco. I think they're going to take a step back, and I think they're finishing third in the West this year. I think Seattle's winning the division. We'll get into our predictions in a few minutes, but I think Seattle's winning the division, and Arizona's going to be second. I just think, the Chiefs exposed a lot of holes in that team in the Super Bowl. And the fact that they couldn't hold that lead in the fourth quarter was very concerning. Kyle Shanahan, that's now twice that, a team, an offense under his direction has not been able to preserve a lead in the Super Bowl. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to be bad in the regular season necessarily, but I think Jimmy Garoppolo is a good quarterback. I don't necessarily trust his weapons. I don't trust their running game. They have a great defense, but they also didn't make any changes. And we talked about this a few shows ago, Tim, about how San Francisco and Baltimore made no changes in the offseason, and teams are able to game plan and adjust to that and might be able to figure things out. My good team, well, I'm not going to try to be biased here, but I think the Philadelphia Eagles could actually put things together for a decent season. Now, I'm not saying they're going to be great. I'm saying they're going to win 10 games, which, in the NFC East is like, going undefeated these days. But I think Carson Wentz, at least in the regular season, before, he hurts himself somehow in the playoff game, I think he's going to be decent in the regular season. And yeah, I like this Jalen Reagor kid that they brought, that they drafted in the first round. I also am intrigued to see how they work Jalen Hurts in. I could see them trying to slot him in like a Taysom Hill-like role, where even though he's the backup quarterback, they use him in some wildcat plays that would throw teams off. And of course, the two tight ends, Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert, who really emerged to be a starting caliber tight end when Ertz was hurt at the end of last season. And looking at the rest of the NFC East, the Giants are practicing with tennis balls. Washington doesn't even have a team name. And the Cowboys are just so concerned with all their contracts that they're not going to be able to focus this season. So I think the Eagles might be able to take advantage of that and get to 10-6. Zoe, what's your good team and bad team in the NFC?
I really enjoyed your breakdown of the NFC East. That was fantastic. I was going to say the same thing. I was going to say, Washington should worry less about looking for new players and more about looking for a new name because, they're kind of screwed. So I agree with you on that one. I would go through and I would say that the Vikings are completely going to fall off. Like, I know the Vikings have been, in contention every year. I don't think they have anything left. You lose Diggs. Your defense is hurting. You lose a couple guys there. Kirk Cousins is a complete mess at quarterback. I don't think anything's going to work for you there. And as we were saying before, they're in a really tough division. So part of me now wants to say the Lions are going to be good. But I can't because I say it every year and it never happens. But I'm going to do it anyway. So I think that the Lions could potentially be one of those teams that could be good. I definitely know what we were talking about, and I think it all hangs in the balance of if Matt Patricia can get that defense in check and if that running game succeeds and people don't get hurt. But I think if everything comes together, the Lions could really, really be a good team that could be in contention to win the North.
All right, so let's get into our division predictions. I'm just going to go one by one and name each division and just say who you think's going to win. AFC East. Tim, who's winning the division?
Jets 16-0 all the way. No, I'm kidding. I would have to say the New England Patriots. I think that Cam Newton could lead this offense, if he is healthy, of course, throughout the entire season. And I'm very excited to see the dynamic duo. We know Cam is a winning quarterback. And yes, don't get me wrong, he didn't win the Super Bowl against Peyton Manning, but he's come a very long way. He's still a very decent quarterback, despite his accuracy issues throwing the deep ball. But overall, he's going to be big for this Patriots team and someone they definitely needed.
Zoe?
I'm taking the Bills there. I think the Patriots I think they're going to disintegrate. This season is an all-win or an all-lose season, and it's going to be an all-lose season. So I'm taking the Bills every day.
I don't think the Patriots are going to be that bad, but I still think the Bills are going to win the division. I have a lot of faith in Josh Allen. He really proved himself last season, and bringing in Stephon Diggs is a big boost to that offense. So I think the AFC East is actually, despite what some people think that, all the teams are bad there now, I think they're going to get two teams in the playoffs. I think, especially with the expanded playoffs, New England's just going to sneak in as a wild card. Buffalo wins the division. AFC North, Tim.
That's a little bit tough. I mean, I'd like to sit there and say the Baltimore Ravens, but overall things are slowly starting to fall apart now that especially you just lost Earl Thomas the other day. So, and I mean, this is still really, I guess you could say Baltimore's division, but I'm really excited to see what the Pittsburgh Steelers do because I really think that's the difference maker in the AFC North this year. Because, I mean, you look at, obviously, I know they had Ben Roethlisberger hurt last year, but if we see vintage Big Ben this year, especially week 1 against the weak New York Giants defense, we know it's going to be a long division battle all year long. I'm going to say the Ravens just get it, but again, that's really, I mean, they can just get it or they can blow it away, depending on what happens with the Steelers.
Zoe?
I don't know how you don't pick the Ravens. I don't think it's even close. And the Steelers of all, you might as well have said the Bengals. I don't think that's even close. Ben Roethlisberger's 1,000. He's nowhere near Lamar. And if you match up the weapons, I get that the Steelers have Juju and stuff, but it's nowhere near the weapons that the Ravens have on both sides of the ball.
My concern, though, was that the Ravens are 0-2 in the playoffs, and, they get beaten by Tennessee. I know Tennessee went on a crazy run in the playoffs last year, but, that's a slight concern on my end. I still think Baltimore's going to win the division. I have no faith in Lamar Jackson in the playoffs right now, and I think Pittsburgh's sneaking into the postseason. I have no faith in the Cleveland Browns, but I think Baltimore wins the AFC North. Let's move to the South, where that's always a lot of storylines and always like a very close division. Tim, who do you got?
When you look at the South, it's so hard. You mentioned it's so hard to pick a winner because it feels like it's a different team every single year. But I'm gonna have to go with the Texans simply because I think they're the best put together team left in that division. The Jaguars are still a mess. The Colts, I don't see them winning unless they can find an actual quarterback, in my opinion. And the Titans, it's either they're going to be good or they're not good. So I think you have to continue with that consistent feed. Deshaun Watson, this is his team. Yes, you lose DeAndre Hopkins, but at the end of the day, this is going to be the weakest team in the AFC, whoever wins this division. So I'm going to go with the Texans.
Zoe?
The Texans always manage to find their way into the playoffs somehow. So I would say most likely I see them getting a wild card, and I see the Titans taking the division just for the reason that Derrick Henry is so dominant. If he plays anywhere near the level he played in the playoffs, he's going to blow everyone out of the water. And then A.J. Brown as a wide receiver, I'm so high on this kid. I love him so much, and I think he's going to become an absolute star. So I'm going to take the Titans there.
I'm agreeing with Zoe here. The Titans really proved themselves last year in the postseason, and Tannehill's back. They didn't really change too much up, and they got it working at the end of the season. I think they might get off to another slow start, but I think they will come out on top in the division. The Texans usually have a home game on the Saturday of the playoffs and lose, but that's not going to happen this year. And this is maybe my big surprise here. I do not have Houston in the playoffs. I actually have Indianapolis getting one of the last playoff spots. I've got Indy, Pittsburgh, and New England as my 3 wildcard teams. And I'm going to go with Indianapolis. I know Tim doesn't have much faith here in Phillip Rivers, what he has to offer. But don't forget, 2 years ago, he led the Chargers pretty deep into the postseason. And they do have a nice running back duo with the rookie Jonathan Taylor and then Marlon Mack, who's really been sneaky good these last couple of years. I don't think they're going to be great. I think they're going to be like a 9-7 team. But I think them, like the Patriots, sneak in just above the Texans, despite how good Deshaun Watson is. I think not having Hopkins anymore is really going to hurt them. And David Johnson is the most overrated good player in the entire NFL. So I think the Texans are going to actually miss out this year. Let's finish up the AFC here with the West. I don't think this is much of a debate, Tim.
Yeah, I'm going to say, the Chargers. No, I would have to say definitely the Chiefs. In fact, I think the Chiefs are going to make a good push this year for a 15-1, maybe 14-2 type of year. I know sometimes when you win the Super Bowl, you have that layback for a team in which they falter, but we're talking about a team that's poised to win. Andy Reid does nothing but win in his career, except for when it mattered until last year. I think this team's going to be charging early on. You're going to see this team playing with a purpose to try to win back-to-back years. This is going to be the team to watch, arguably the team to beat out there in the AFC.
Zoe, you with the Chiefs too?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Yeah, we only got 9 minutes left in the meeting, so we're going to start moving a little quickly. Chiefs all the way. Patrick Mahomes, I think he's going to be the MVP once again this season. Let's move to the NFC. I like the Eagles in the East. What do you say, Tim?
The Eagles?
Yes.
You really have that much faith in your own team? I'm the only one here that didn't even pick my own team as the upside for this year. And the Giants made some good moves.
Because it's the Giants. I mean,
okay, Carson Wentz. Tell me when he can actually
he's going to the regular
playoff game.
I know, yeah, but I'm not saying he's going to win the playoff game. I'm saying he's going to win the East.
Listen, this still lines up for the Dallas Cowboys, no matter who's the coach, to be consistently up in winning the NFC East. I have no faith in Washington. I am optimistic as a Giants fan. Maybe this year, every year last year, I said, hey, this is our year to be 9-7. Well, this year I'm saying we're 5-11. Maybe we'll do good this year because the last time I did that, we made it to the NFC wildcard round just to get squashed by Green Bay. So overall, I'm going to say the Dallas Cowboys are the best football team I've ever seen. Not really, but they're going to win the NFC East over the Eagles, who could be a wild card team if their defense allows them to stay healthy for the first time in 20 years.
All right, Zoe, settle the debate here.
You sound like a Lions fan, first of all, saying, I'm going to say we're good and you're bad every year, and then the one year you're good, you get squashed by the Packers. That's my life story. So I'm going to say Cowboys here. I don't think it's that. I think maybe the Eagles could challenge them, and possibly in some world the Giants, if they can get Saquon working well and through the line. But other than that, I think it's Cowboys, no problem.
All right, NFC North. I know Zoe's going to be saying the Lions are going to go 6.
I'm not. You got to go Packers. You got to go Packers. There's no way. The Packers are too unstoppable.
Yeah, despite all the concerns that, they're going to replace Aaron Rodgers with Jordan Love, that's just more motivation for Rodgers to do good. The Bears are a mess. They don't even know who their quarterback is. Minnesota's going to be decent, but I'm going with the Packers. Tim, you in agreement here?
Hey, I'm just saying Aaron Rodgers finally broke up with Danica Patrick. And overall, every time Danica Patrick's had a breakup with someone that's in the sports aspect, they've turned around and have had career years. I have a lot of faith in Aaron Rodgers this year. We saw it work for Ricky Stenhouse. I hope for that magic continues over for Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay.
Ricky Stenhouse also just started wrecking everybody, so now maybe Aaron Rodgers has become a little more feisty. Well, let's see.
We got 2 wins.
Yeah, that's true. NFC South. I mean, we've already talked a lot about this division. I think Tampa's making the playoffs, but I don't think it's a question that the New Orleans Saints win the division. Zoe?
No question, definitely the Saints. Drew Brees is too unstoppable, and Michael Thomas, there's no shutting him down.
And Tim?
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree. Michael Thomas is arguably the best receiver in football, and that's another debate for another day. But the way you look at it is that this defense really, really scary if they can be consistent. I know they've lacked in the playoffs, but again, this defense gets better and better, in my opinion, every single year.
And lastly, the NFC West. I already said Seahawks narrowly over Arizona. Zoe, who you got?
I say Seahawks too, but I say over the 49ers.
Tim?
I have 49ers. I think that they'll come back and they'll be successful. I really don't see Arizona being a push maybe as a wild card team. I just don't see them pushing for a division. I think it really comes down to San Francisco and Seattle.
All right. Couple quick award things. Not like just general. I'm going to start with Zoe. Who's going to be the best rookie out of this class this season?
That's a tough one. I'm such a sucker for Tua. It's insane. And I think if he can do anything with the Dolphins, I think he pretty much secures it for himself.
Tim?
I would love to say Tua, but I feel like Joe Burrow will stand out for Cincinnati if he plays good. But at the same time, a lot of years, Eddie, we've talked about the offense and the quarterbacks, running backs. Who's better? I think that, for example, Andrew Thomas on the Giants could stand out as a big, offensive tackle. I think this year we could see a lineman be the best player.
A lineman winning Rookie of the Year.
Not Rookie of the Year, but best rookie. That's a little bit different.
I am going to give a little support to the Cowboys because I think they made a good draft pick. I'm not saying he's going to be the best, but I think CeeDee Lamb is going to have a standout year and become quite a staple in the receiving game. I think Jerry Jeudy's going to be solid as well. But I got to go with Joe Burrow. I have faith in him that he's going to have a rocky start, but I think he's going to really settle in. And maybe AJ Green will actually play for the Bengals, and he can have a top target. But I don't have any faith in that. I do have faith that Burrow is going to be solid, though. Who's going to be the best coach in the NFL this season, Tim?
It's going to be tough. I think this year because, to be honest, who won Coach of the Year last year? I'm trying to remember. It wasn't Andy Reid, right?
No, it was. Was it?
It was Harbaugh, right?
Yeah, it was Harbaugh. Yeah.
So I think this year Andy Reid could turn around and get Coach of the Year. Overall, it's been a long time coming for him with the Chiefs especially. And again, this is the team I still think that you need to go out there and beat in terms of the AFC. So I think this could be his year.
Zoe?
I mean, I don't believe it that much, but I'll play to your guys' strengths and say if the Buccaneers can get anything done, then I think Bruce Arians.
I'm going to go with Belichick because I think if the Patriots make the postseason with Cam Newton coming back from injury, I think that's going to be quite the accomplishment. I think, that's quite the coaching job because he does not have, a legendary all-time quarterback out there. He's got Cam Newton, who's old and coming off an injury. Last thing, most important thing, Super Bowl predictions. I'm going to start, then I'll go to Zoe, then to Tim. AFC, I think this year's MVP, Patrick Mahomes, is going to lead the Chiefs into the Super Bowl. And their matchup, this is going to be a bit of a surprise to everybody. I don't have faith in New Orleans or Tampa Bay in the playoffs. I think the Green Bay Packers are going to be motivated, and I think Aaron Rodgers is going to get them into the Super Bowl. Yes, a Super Bowl I rematch. I don't think the Packers are going to win, though. I think the Chiefs make it back-to-back. Zoe?
I think you take the Chiefs from the AFC side, too. The Packers are always dangerous when they get into the playoffs. That's not a question. But I'm actually going to take the Saints because I think if Drew Brees can stay healthy, and as we said before, Michael Thomas, I don't think you can shut him down.
Who's going to win?
You got to go Chiefs. You got to go Chiefs. You can't.
All right, lastly, Tim.
It's funny. You and I must be thinking the same way in regards to a Super Bowl. I think I have Green Bay versus Kansas City going at it for the Super Bowl, and Aaron Rodgers gets it done this year. I just want to see it. It'll be an offensive show, something that we've been desiring now for the past few Super Bowls. But I really think this could be a very good year for Green Bay. I just hope they live up to the expectations.
You think the Honey Badgers going to let Aaron Rodgers do anything on that field? I doubt it.
Well, we're going to have to see what happens. Expanded postseason, season beginning in just 2 weeks. Zoe Alter, great to have you here once again. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Always the most fun, especially football.
All right, so Monday, Tim and I will be back. We'll have Dan Botafuco joining us to preview the NASCAR playoffs. So until then, I'm Eddie Kalegi.
And I'm Tim Moore.
Wishing you a great weekend here on Sports Speak.